no formal guests today, but would like to welcome all of our family guests. Welcome, everybody. And my family guest, Braden, has a joke.
What did Adam say on the day before Christmas? It's Christmas Eve. Why is Christmas just like the day at the office? You do all the work and the fat guy with the suit gets all the credit. What do you do when you cross a snowman with a shark? Frostbite. That's how the years are turned.
Thanks, Dianna. And who says the Rotary doesn't attract young audiences? Now it's time for Dianna Kuntz to give us a Christmas teaching moment. Dianna's President and CEO of Volunteers of America. Dianna.
When I was a little girl, growing up in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, Christmas was the most wonderful time of the year. Even today, when I'm telling someone how it was a really wonderful time, I say it was like Christmas. So I'm sure that many of you share that wonderful memory of the holidays. One of the things I remember most about Christmas was every Christmas my grandmother would take me downtown on the number 13 bus to see all the wonderful windows in the department stores that used to be on 16th Street. We'd always have lunch at the Woolworth counter, and then before we left town, my grandmother would always buy me a little girl's purse. Now she told me that she'd have to find that every Sunday in the Lost and Founded church, or so she said, but I had to have it. And I don't want to shock some of the younger among us, but it hasn't been that long ago that Denver had no shopping malls. None. And the Daniel and Fisher Tower was the highest building in Denver. As we walked down 16th Street, I can remember looking up at Daniel and Fisher Tower and knowing that we were on our way to the right bus stop. And it was a very, very fun opportunity. The other thing I thought was wonderful about downtown Denver at the time was all the Salvation Army bell ringers and the Volunteers of America Santas that were ringing the bells on the street corners. And little did I know, a few decades later, I myself would be ringing those bells for the Volunteers of America. And I even ran the Santa program for a while, and finally retired it permanently. But that's a different story for a different day. To revisit some of the wonderful excitement of the holidays, I decided to look into some of the customs that are associated with this wonderful time of year. And I found some very interesting factoids that I thought you might be interested in hearing today. One of the first things I've always loved about the holidays are the Christmas trees. They're so beautiful, and I'm sure many of you have the same custom I do. Anytime I go on a trip, I always try to find a Christmas tree ornament that I can bring out every year to remember the fun of that trip. So I thought we might be interested in knowing where all this Christmas tree custom came from. The roots of the custom of bringing a tree into the home started over 1,000 years ago in what is now Scandinavia. Of course, there the winters are very long and dark, and sometimes, even in the brightest of days, it doesn't get over 0 degrees. The superstitious Vikings thought that they could get some of the mystical power of the evergreen by bringing boughs into their homes. The tree not only survived the really harshest part of winter, the darkest part of winter, but it really seemed to flourish when things were at its darkest. The Vikings wanted to share in that mystery, and they began to chop down trees and bring them into their homes. Now, many other groups did the same kind of thing, and I was interested to learn that in those early days the custom was to hang the tree upside down in the home. And I couldn't really find out why that was the custom. But many groups did it, and it was many, many years later before they actually brought the tree into the home, set it on a table or the floor. In the 7th century, St. Boniface, who was a monk living in England, he became very interested, and he moved around quite a lot. And he was actually a missionary and would go through Europe. And one day, it said, the legend says, he came upon a group of men that were standing around an oak tree. And they had in their hands a small child who they had decided they were going to actually crucify and give to the god Thor. Well, of course, St. Boniface wasn't having any of that. And he told them to stop it immediately. They ignored him. And the legend said he hit the oak tree very hard. And to everyone's surprise, the oak tree fell down. And behind it was a small fir tree that had been obscured. And of course, having everything be a teaching moment, he proceeded to tell the Vikings, who at that point thought he himself had mystical powers, that the tree itself was a symbol of God and of Christianity because it could withstand the most bleakest of times. And he also pointed out that the shape of the tree was, in his mind, a representation of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It wasn't until 5 centuries later that the legend of the tree and the lighted tree came to light when one of Christianity's biggest theologians, Martin Luther, also traveling through a dark forest, not a dark forest in those days. He was very enamored of the sunlight coming, or the starlight coming through the tree. Went home and tried to recreate it in his own home by lighting candles and putting them on the tree. Not only was he impressed with the results, his family was, all his neighbors were, and it didn't take long for that custom to take over. This was an interesting one for me. I'm sure that many of you have come into this situation. You don't really know how to wish people the best of the season. You don't know whether to say Merry Christmas. You don't know whether to say Happy Holidays. And whichever one you choose, there's likely someone that is going to be offended. And I found that to be somewhat amusing. And when I found this information, I thought it might help you make your decisions in the future. Over the past 60 years, but mostly in the last 2 years, there has been some people and Christians who are lamenting that many people are trying to take Christ out of Christmas by using the word Xmas and not the full Christmas. What I found is that really is not correct. That actually this particular symbol is one of the most common symbols that was used by the early Christians. And they proclaimed it as their opportunity to identify to the world that they were Christians. Christmas is not a new custom, and it's not an irreverent one. The use dates back to the earliest days of the Christian church. Many of the Gentiles who became the initial followers of Christ were Greek. The Greek for Christ's name is Christos with an X. Many Christian Greeks use the X as their symbol of their faith. The X marked the place where they worshipped. Therefore, the use of X for Christ was one of the oldest traditions of the Christian faith. One of the first concrete symbols that signified the gospel's message was available to people of every race and every background. Most Christians don't know that Xmas was first used by the church and not invented by some merchant who was trying to simplify their signs or to commercialize Christmas. If the early Christians would come back today and see the word Xmas, they would immediately understand we were talking about Christ. And it would be one of the most wonderful and powerful symbols of the holiday to them. And I don't know if some of you are big fans of some of the talk radio shows that have taken on this issue, but I welcome you to do some research.